My name is Michelle, and I am a very proud parent of Nicole, a senior here at SVA. I want to give you some testimony tonight. Mr. Leeper knows a little bit about our background and how we came to be here at SVA. And I didn't want to do it, but I am always faced with asking God for giving us the opportunity to share what He wants us to share. So when He presents us with these type of opportunities, then we have to follow them. We have to follow God's path. He leads us and He directs us. So I want to just give you my personal testimony, and I won't embarrass Nicole by having her come up here and share. About 10.5 years ago, our family life had gone through a big upheaval, and all of a sudden, Nicole and I were a single family, a single parent household, and we just couldn't manage. So back into the loving arms of my parents, we moved to Virginia. We moved back to Virginia. They've been here about 30 years, and we started a new life. We picked a church. We had never gone to church before. We picked a new church. We enrolled Nicole in a very good private Christian school. I got a job and life started over. Everything seemed normal. You know, God seemed to put us on that path, so we went with it. About 3 years ago, after work one day, I was having some stomach pains, and God again was leading us somewhere. I had gone to the emergency room to find out what was wrong with me. By that evening, I was at UVA and diagnosed with accelerated chronic myelogenic leukemia. I thought, wow, you know, this is big. But my family had rallied around me, and I had about one day of self-pity and crying and thought, you know what? God has got this. God has got this. I didn't realize at the time, and found out much later, that my prognosis, had I not been diagnosed and started on chemo, was 4 months. So I knew God was working in my life. If anybody knows, and I'm sure everybody in this room has known a family member who's gone through cancer. When you go through chemo, it's very debilitating, and everything slows down almost to a complete stop. I gave up work, and I was home, and I was on chemo every day. With that came one of my favorite things to do, channel surf. So I was watching a lot of shows, and what I was particularly interested in were the different Bible studies and all the church channels. We're in the Bible Belt. I mean, you can't get away from it. There are so many shows and so many pastors and so many different types of churches. I just found it so interesting to compare them. But one day I ran across a sermon, or maybe it was a study, I don't really remember, on a channel called 3ABN, which I'm sure a lot of you are familiar with, the Three Angels Broadcasting Network. I had never seen it before, but it grabbed me. It's talking about prophecies and Daniel and Revelation, and it was so interesting that I continued every day watching something new. But what happened was that I started hearing sermons about things that I had never known. Growing up in a very secular home, I kind of went along with what I thought was Christian values and believing things like, you know, our parents are looking down, our grandparents or our family members are looking down from us from heaven and sending us signs like butterflies by the window. That's my grandmother sending me a personal message. Things like, we die and we're either in heaven right now or we're suffering in another place. I heard things about a Sabbath day. The Sabbath day is Sunday. Everybody in America goes to church on Sunday. What is that about? I heard about all these new truths, the three angels' message, and going out and doing what we need to do for God. Just so many different things that didn't match what I had learned or what I thought I knew every day. So I thought, well, I need to figure out why these things are so different. Why am I learning different things? So I decided, where else? Go to my pastor and ask him. And I got messages like, well, we're under a new covenant, and these things were nailed to the cross. That's why we don't go to Sunday church, or that's why we do go to Sunday church. We don't honor what is the true Sabbath. Or I would hear from my prayer group, my study group, we celebrate because Jesus was resurrected on Sunday, so that's why we're honoring that. My uncle is a pastor, and he told me the same thing. He says, are you going to go against 1,500 years of Christianity and agree with that because you think you're right and everybody else is wrong? And in my mind, I thought, yes, because the Bible has told me this. I couldn't find in any of the scripture that anybody was giving me that was wrong. I was learning for myself. I wasn't listening to what other people said, but I went out and got a note-taking Bible and started reading scripture and actually seeing these things are wrong. How can Christianity be so opposite of what I'm learning now? So I decided I needed an outside source. So I looked in the phone book, and lo and behold, there was a church that celebrated on Saturday. I said, this is what I need to go see and learn about. And I had called the church, and the pastor said, sure, come in tomorrow, and we'll discuss these things. I didn't even know there was anything about the Adventist church. I didn't know that we had one in the county, 15 minutes away from the house. So the next day I went in, and the more I was speaking with the pastor, I couldn't believe how things lined up. What he was explaining to me was exactly what I was learning by studying on my own in the Bible. I couldn't believe it. I was invited to come visit the church service. I was immediately set up with a Bible prayer partner who is now one of my best friends, and it was amazing. This has got to be the right place. I came out of that meeting feeling like puzzle pieces that I'd never known were apart were just put together. I thought, this has got to be right. This has got to be the right message. Why isn't every church preaching this? I couldn't understand it because everything made sense. Everything that I learned seemed to be the truth. So I started coming every Saturday. That Saturday, in fact, I started going to our local Seventh-day Adventist church. On Sunday, however, I continued to go to church with my daughter. I wasn't going to just pull her out of something that she had known and loved for many years. We loved our church. We loved our pastor. We loved the family members. It was a great, great church. It just wasn't right. So we continued to go on Sundays. I continued to go on Saturdays. And my daughter was interested in coming. So I didn't push it, and I brought her along, and she seemed to believe the same things that we were being taught. So within, I would say, maybe 2 months, both of us were now members of this church. We had believed that this was the right message. This was the truth that God was giving us. He would not have led us to this church if it hadn't been right. We weren't churchgoers. The devil didn't have to go far for us. We did not believe in church, but now we did. So we continued at the Adventist church. As far as getting to this point, Nicole had made some friends in our local church, and they were going off to SVA, and that was kind of upsetting to her. She had connected with a peer group that she liked, and she was upset by it, that she was kind of losing new friends already to the school. And I asked her, well, do you think you might want to go to SVA? And she immediately stopped and said, well, yeah, So I called the school and we set up an appointment with Mr. Lowe, and we visited the school, and it seemed to be the right place to be. That week, we received money that I didn't even know I was expecting, that was within $6 of tuition for this school. God had provided in a huge way to make this happen. So we know that this was the right place to be. We had the transcripts put in, and she was enrolled last year as a junior. We know that God leads us, but God moved mountains in our lives. He made so many changes through things that I thought were bad news, were not great things, with illness, with separation, with moving 500 miles away from all that Nicole had known her entire life. But it was God moving us in this direction. It was only through His blessings that led us here. And I just want to leave you with that we might not ever know how God is working in our lives when we're faced with difficult things, or with problems, or just lifetime things that we don't understand. But God always knows, and God is always clearing the path for us to be here. So I am here tonight, and Nicole is here today, because God has sent us here, and I believe that. And I thank SVA for accepting Nicole and welcoming her, because I'm so happy for her to be learning this way of life.